Judy, you want that?
Get the paperwork together here, everybody. We should be able to start. There were supposed to be some more handouts, but.
There's another one, I'm gonna hand it on the way back.
Well, I didn't know, did everybody get in their meeting packets, the ZEO report and budget? Yeah, okay. Okay, I don't know what I did with my copies, I didn't know if they had made the packets. Here. Sorry, I'll do that. Very good job. I'll say something during the meeting.
I probably will too.
Okay. All right, everybody. They just check to make sure there's nobody. Okay. So I will call to order Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for July 20th, 2023. Whatever time you have, Amy, is fine. Here. Okay. We'll go through the roll call. Okay, there's nobody on. Yeah. You mind starting this out, Dwight?
Wait, Reynolds?
Give me, Mark Blackmore,
Joseph Adeletta.
Doug Ford, Dean Gould,
Jeff Gordon.
David Morris, Jeff Markout.
Joe Bullock.
And we'll note that we have a quorum. And as far as designation of alternate, you just see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. So we need 1. So where we stand actually is right now, according to my record, we're still cycling through alphabetical. And I have listed that the next person in that order would be Dean. If you accept the challenge. Yep. And we'll note that Dean Gould is C. That takes us to Pledge of Allegiance. Pledging allegiance to the flag of the States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Thank you. It's very simple. Thank you for all of you commissioners for the work and coming to the meetings, and thank you as well to staff for the work that gets done at meetings and in between meetings. I don't have anything else from a chair's report. Point of view. Citizens' comments, any comments from citizens not pertaining to agenda item? I don't hear any. We have meeting minutes. We have 2 meeting minutes. We have the one from June 15th, and we have the one from July 6th. What is the pleasure of the commission? We approve the meeting? Yeah, the minutes. Both of them? Sure. Okay. Is there a second?
No second.
That you, Dean?
Yep.
So motion by David Moore, seconded by Dean Gould to approve as presented the June 15th, the July 6th meeting minutes. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor? Aye. Anyone no? Any abstention?
Abstain from the last.
So you'll have to abstain from the whole motion. Okay. Anybody else abstaining? And Mark. So we'll note that Mark Blackmer and David Morris have abstained, but there were no no's, so we'll take that up. Thank you. Let me just sit down. Check before the meeting started.
It's the notice in the board.
There. Okay, yeah, no, it had listed hours, and then it did whatever it did. So I'm assuming it's working. Hopefully. So, all right, that then takes us to new business, which we have not received any new business that I'm aware of. In preliminary discussion, we have not received anything for preliminary discussion. We do have technically scheduled a public hearing to start at 7:45. But even though it's 7:45, we're not going to be able to open the public hearing. This is on agenda item 7A, number 658-062, Supreme Sheds and Barns, 292-169. This is about a special permit application. The reason is, Delia, you had submitted in, you've gotten confirmation from the Norwich Bulletin about the public notices were supposed to post. But evidently the Norwich Bulletin did not publish the first public.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what they may or may not have published second, but you have to have both published within the statutory time. So that's why I sent an email out prior, just asking about what people's availability might be for August. I think it's 3rd. It was our first Thursday versus waiting to the 17th. Did you have something?
I just wanted to make sure that it's on the record that I had tried to put it in the villager, and I missed the deadline. But then I was hoping I would get it published in the North Bulletin for the first notice and then the second notice in the villager. But the Norwich Bulletin that confirmed apparently wanted a confirmation of the confirmation, and they didn't hear from me, and I was like, I didn't know I needed to confirm with confirmation, so they didn't publish it. And the villager, that may be too late to cancel that, so you'll get a bill for that, and it'll have to be paid for. And then I've rescheduled to have the legal notice to be published tomorrow in the villager, and then next Friday in the bill. So providing they get published, we'll be fine.
So because the first of two notices was not published by the bulletin, we can't open the public hearing because we have to have those two notices. This has happened from time to time with the bulletin. So at this point, we can't open the public hearing. Our job would be to reschedule it. The earliest we could reschedule it to would be August 3rd, if I have the date correct. We normally do the public hearings at 7:45. You did notify the applicant, and the applicant's
Yeah.
representatives, so they were aware. And they had said that if we wanted to do this on the 3rd of August, they would be available. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yep.
So we did, reach out to them to find out what was up with their schedule. But right now, we'll just know we can't open the public hearing and why. And really, our task now would be the motion as far as when we wish to reschedule again. August 3rd would be the soonest we can. It's not the applicant's fault. Paper did not publish, so don't want to hold the applicant liable for that. That's the paper. So that would be August 3rd is the earliest we can pivot to our next meeting.
Motion reschedule the public hearing for Supreme Sheds and Barns. August 3rd at 7:45 p.m.
Yeah.
Is that you, Tim? Okay. So motion by Jeff Markov, seconded by Tim Young to reschedule the public hearing for agenda item 7A, August 3rd, 2023 at 7:45 p.m. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody? No. Any abstentions? I'll take it that it so passes. Thank you. If we do receive anything new, we have not, we didn't receive anything new other than there was the fire.
Right.
But if we do get anything additional comes in, we'll make certain we get it out. For the meeting packets, if we receive it. For the meeting packets, have printed copies here that comes out after the meeting packet. So. The next takes us to an item that I know we've been having on the agenda for some time. This is agenda item 8, commercial cannabis regulation. So, Delia, you had the latest draft up. I'll also say that we did send out were questions that had been asked of Attorney Robert. And we did follow up to get answers from him. We did send them in, and we did get it okay that we can. It's not, we don't have to keep it privileged. There's always the caveat that if there's something that's written for advice that says, please do not do it, it's our own liability. There wasn't anything that he felt was privileged. So we didn't have to embargo it as far as sending it out to you all. But those are the documents of the latest draft, and then the answers to the commission question for legal purposes. You're following it up. Which one you questions or his answers?
I can bring that up and, for the document to look at.
It probably would make sense.
These are just the questions in the stuff. And there are questions in the proposal.
And there are
Everybody
printed
has-
copies.
Front of them here, and I also emailed it to you.
So these were questions, I forget when they were asked. But we did get replies on that. If there's anything you want to go through, Delia, although a lot of them are self-explanatory. If there was anything you wanted to comment about it, happy to open it up for discussion. One thing I do want to mention, because I think it's important for our timeline, our moratorium ends at the end of October 31st. So we had to extend the moratorium. That was the second extension. So we just better be mindful, depending upon where we are with the work. If we're going to be bumping to that deadline, we're going to need to have enough time to have a public hearing for a text amendment to extend the deadline. So just want to let everybody know where we are on the time frame after our last meeting in July. And so depending upon where we stand with work tonight, we're going to have to pivot then about that more. But just want to let people know where we are. Anything, Delia, or we
Jeff?
just go with each one through? Yes.
Just a quick question on the timeline. What is the trigger for meeting the timeline? At least the commission approving a draft regulation, or it goes to public hearing, gets approved, and then 15 days after that, or is it after the 15 days and it's a official zoning regulation?
So what will happen is that we actually have to take something to public hearing.
Right.
Then we have to approve it.
Right.
We do that before the moratorium ends. I would imagine, because we're gonna have to set an effective date of change. So if we say we're setting it for 15 days from the approval, we would want to make certain ideally that that's before October 31st, because there could then be a period where the regs aren't active, but someone
Yeah.
happened to submit an application and the moratorium ended, but the new regs don't go in. The new regs don't apply retroactively. So yeah, and that's why just on the timeline, we just need to be mindful where we are with the moratorium. But you're correct, it would be the effective date is set. And we usually do, don't we do 15 days to allow the paper to publish its appeal? Because there's that appeal period that people can have. So that's tend to be what we've done.
But just a rough estimate, assuming October is all of the public hearing time, and then 15 days gives us meetings in September and August to kind of finish draft to go to public hearing.
Well-
Roughly.
I think why you've chosen more than 15 days is when your meeting is on a Thursday, it's too late for you to get it into the villager.
Okay.
So if you say, for instance, you made a decision on a Thursday, I can send it in the next day, but it doesn't get published until the next week if you leave the village. And so that's why it's a little bit more than 15 days. The start of the appeal period starts on the day after the publication, not on the day you make your vote.
So what we would have to keep in mind is, we would have to say, we say we want to take the public hearing. The next time we can do that, I think is when, third Thursday.
I suppose you could start it on, doesn't have to be the third Thursday.
We just need to make certain we can meet the postings,
Right,
right? You know, so if we, and then we would, at a public hearing. As you know, we then close the public hearing at some point and then make the decision. So we just have to be mindful on the calendar. I have it listed as far as also how much time we'll need to go to public hearing to extend the moratorium. But, I think, we've been making some good work and we hopefully can power through some stuff. David, did you want to go through these answers?
sure.
Or we can see if commissioners have any questions or comments about them. These were the ones generated. Forget which meeting, but they were generated of Rich has replied.
So we asked a question about the dispensary facility. So we have the draft and you can, hopefully you can read it on the screen or in paper in front of you. We have the draft definition that we currently have in the text amendment, and then his response is in bold. I don't know if I should, read it, or if you want me to read it out loud.
Well, I guess this one was asking about dispensary facility, referring to dispensing or selling.
Right.
He's replied. As far as what a dispensary facility refers to. Chapter 420, yeah. Statutes.
We're referring specifically to medical marijuana, not the recreational marijuana. Divided up. in Statute.
It is, although instead of just referring to chapter 420F, sometimes just refer to general statutes in general. And
Yeah.
not a particular number, because we normally will say, Connecticut general statute, or as may be amended. That way, because in the past, we used to have to keep amending whenever they change certain things or change numbering.
I think the question was, if we have our draft regulation, there is a different definition for the other kind of facility. We're gonna have to go back up, but I think that's why we were asking about it.
Well, in the draft, we do have, some of these definitions were ones that, he had given us previously when we created the moratorium.
So if, from Rich's definition here, the dispensary facility is to do with medical marijuana sales. So if we, what are we calling somebody who wants to sell recreational? Dispensary?
That's another retailer,
Just a retailer?
but maybe want to call it a cannabis retailer because we have retail businesses. I don't know if that's gonna cause confusion with
Okay,
like regular retail businesses that sell, whatever, as opposed to businesses that only sell cannabis stuff.
so okay, that makes sense.
But I don't-
Retailer is who's gonna
Remember,
be selling this.
specifically if the term retailer is from the statute, this is just in our draft.
And again, the retailer, because it's not in red, isn't that one of the definitions he gave us previously? Remember, he gave us a whole bunch of definitions when we created the moratorium? I think that's one of the ones he gave us at the time.
So is a dispensary facility a retailer as well?
I think it's the medical marijuana retailer.
Correct. The state, when they talk about dispensary, the state is looking at a quote unquote medical marijuana. The state does differentiate between what is being done, quote unquote, medical, what's just being done. Otherwise, it also gets into how they license and regulate.
To me, I'm thinking of it like a dispensing and it's sort of like a pharmacy as opposed to a convenience store or any other kind of store.
One of the earlier drafts, the definitions showed the retailer with the clause that just says a person excluding a dispensary facility. So maybe that's worth putting in to clarify the retail
We could do that.
definition.
So you wanna take the strikeout out? Cause right now that part is stricken out.
Depending on which
That
one.
one.
Well, if you want to add back in about excluding a dispensary facility, we can do that to clarify it. I mean, again, these definitions are all cannabis related terms.
Yeah.
It even says it there, so if we're talking, you're looking at this definition for retail here, it has to be for cannabis, because it's specific in this section. But if you think that would make it clearer. What do you think?
And it already says consumers in the definition that we have now, not, dispensary would be more of a patient. That has to have a prescription.
And again, the way the state deals with dispensaries is a whole issue about who qualifies and doesn't qualify via the separate law. For quote unquote medical marijuana, there's a different group that deals with that. It adds diagnoses and diseases to a growing list. that they maintain.
So what I have on the screen is your current draft for that definition of retailer. If you wanna make a change, I can make it now, so that we're all on the same page with this definition.
What do we wish to do? Just add it back in?
I'm comfortable adding it back in.
Anybody object? Okay. We do that magic healing right before our eyes. Okay.
Hold on,
Phenomenal. Okay. Do we have anything else about dispensary facility, or can we go on to the second? Q&A? Okay. I guess the second one was about the draft regulations would allow the cannabis retailer to sell non-cannabis products. And so that could increase the scale of the business. I guess Rich is saying under the statute, it could include things like pipes, papers, and supplies for home growing, but it would probably not include food or beverages that aren't infused with cannabis, clothing, furniture. That type of stuff. I guess some of that would have to get into, you know, if we're gonna be regulating this and reviewing permits, exactly what is it they're planning to sell or not sell. Similar to what we've talked about with other types of businesses that qualify one way, but if they start ramping up sales for something different, that becomes the dominant, they change their character. So. But I guess that would get into when we review things and also what happens over time. Something the ZBO finds out now they're only 1% cannabis sales and 99% something else completely unrelated. That's very different from what they were granted to do. I don't know how that affects the state licensing, about what the state has requirements. I'm sure they might. I don't know the detail. But we're-
Well, where does it end when you say you can? Put papers and pipes. Bonds. I'd say come up with some smoking device or that exempt or is that included or is not, so. I'm okay with it. It's me.
Although if the statute does talk about cannabis related products and services, that would include. If you want to buy a pipe to smoke, or if Rich is talking supplies for home growing. That's in the statute. We can't override the statute. If the state is viewing that all as cannabis and cannabis related products, as far as the licensing.
That's fine, just leave it in there. So. We could draw a line.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm just glad it clarified that selling snacks, chips and soda, crackers and things, not allowed.
He says it probably would not.
But that
Once you go right.
He says, he says it probably would not.
would
It's not
not,
like a
right.
definite.
Well,
Yeah, he says probably not if they're not infused cannabis. And some of this is uncharted territory till you start seeing what other places are doing and challenges or court cases or what the state does changing regulation. You know, a lot of it is a bit open-ended. It could be difficult to draw in regulation. I think one would have to see if we get any applications, really, you know, we go through a special permit process. These would be a lot of questions we would have to ask. You know, what that type of stuff. I mean, and I'm sure for them to be compliant with their license with the state, they'd have to follow whatever sales or whatever the state says you could do and can't do, I guess. Separate from what we say. Doug?
But we can say that they can't sell other products like chips, soda, things like that.
That we can say, but I don't think we can say you can't sell cannabis related paraphernalia because the state said you can do it. That's probably bundled into their license, but you're right, we can say, yeah, you're not gonna start selling Cheetos, you're not gonna start selling Coca-Cola or things like that.
And clearly, I'd be an advocate for limiting their sales to strictly cannabis and cannabis related items. And if we create the language so that it's restricted, so it's no question. I'm struggling with the town enforcing the regulations that we have on it.
Mhm.
And so I think we need to be very clear in what we have for regulations going forward. What we wanted included. and What we wanted excluded. And if we want to exclude soda, chips and things, I think we should be really clear and just say that.
So maybe we can add under the retailer definition. Sales of non-cannabis related, cannabis items or cannabis related products are prohibited.
Such as,
What do you mean cannabis related?
Well, I'm just using the language they have here.
That'd be your
Products
price
that aren't
paid
cannabis
versus
related.
Right, correct. We can say that very clearly, we can say. If we wanted to give some examples, but we'd have to say including but not limited. You know, that word, but we can do that. I would agree, I think it'll be very difficult for us to kind of draw a line. And you have to do it consistently. If we get like 2 applications, we have to be consistent how we draw that line.
I just want to. I'm trying to think of how you would word it. Are you limiting all the items must include cannabis in some way? Meaning that there wouldn't be anything they could sell that doesn't contain cannabis. Like a
Well,
t-shirt.
well,
That-
see, because now you go with the T-shirt, picture of the cannabis, that gonna count now, you know, which we don't want that to, right? So, but and if a pipe or the papers don't contain cannabis yet. So that's the purchase, so, you know, those are related items, but the T-shirt and chips and all that are not.
So why can't we,
Apparel and food that aren't cannabis related.
why can't we just, say we're allowing cannabis and cannabis related products
Are we
services?
putting that in the definition or are we gonna put it somewhere else?
Well, but I don't know if we put in the definition or we put it somewhere else. I mean, that's what we need to say. It's limited. You know, excludes food and apparel.
It would really be what Rich is saying here would be, what do you say here, he's talking about non-cannabis related or
say-
cannabis infused.
Cannabis and cannabis related products and services include pipes, papers and supplies for home growing. As well as food and value added products that contain cannabis. And then you have to tell me what I just said, like.
How do we wish to do it? Do we wish to, well, I guess the question is, do we want that in the definition or do we just want to put that someplace? We talk about cannabis establishments, especially permitted use. Somewhere put in that this is what we're saying it is, but wouldn't that be the definition? If we say this is the definition,
That's where I think
that
you
would
do
really-
it.
I think, and because we've already identified the retailer or recreational type sale.
You also have a different definition that talks about all of them. You have the cannabis establishment. If you don't want any of these businesses selling
Right.
things that are not cannabis, or that do not contain cannabis, maybe that's where, because that covers all the other ones. It covers the
Yeah,
producer.
it does. So
dispensary,
we can put
like
the same
company,
thing.
private retailer, the food and beverage manufacturer, product manufacturer, and the delivery service.
Right.
So
okay, we
if
just
you don't
say,
want any of the cannabis establishments to sell additional retail items that are not
cannabis.
maybe
related.
cannabis.
Yeah, we put it in without, but
Yeah.
it covers them all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm thinking each one of them.
But how would you like me to word it?
Well, do we need to say we're allowing cannabis and cannabis related products and services, but that not allowing?
No, we don't have to say anything about what, we have to say we're not allowing food or beverage.
Will be non-cannabis, not non-cannabis.
Non-cannabis food or beverage. Or apparel. Paraphernalia, or apparel. Et cetera.
Yeah, we would have to word it to show this is not an all-inclusive list, but here are some examples, so however we want to word that. Here. Does not include, for example, non-cannabis. Food or beverages.
You have to include the apparel. part of it.
That's names.
Yeah, but yeah, I could see not selling Coca-Cola, Pepsi, you know, Red Bull, you know, I could see not doing that, cupcakes, Pokemon, T-shirts with, you know, these towels, stuff.
So we not.
Not wrong.
I don't see why we want that. I would just focus on cannabis.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be easier? What was it say, not allow that other type of stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They don't like it, put it in other town.
Because it, you know, if you allow the t-shirts, then you're gonna allow the towels, right, allow the coffee cup that you said.
So how about this, exclusions include but are not limited to non-cannabis food or beverages or cannabis themed non-food items? Does that make sense?
And you might add clothing to that.
Yeah, or
then, too.
apparel.
Yes, but such as
Clothing and apparel also.
Yes.
clothing,
So we're saying cannabis. And
apparel, or you know, all the other stuff, decorative stuff, or
I just say, such as clothing and apparel. I think if we're saying we're not allowing it all, though, we're saying cannabis themed on. So does that also mean they could get into
I mean, things that
non-cannabis?
have the pictures of, like a T-shirt with a
can't get into
picture of a cannabis.
I know.
I don't know, maybe you can make one with.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that would seem to be, wouldn't that cover this scenario?
Will you read that again, please?
One second. Exclusions include but are not limited to non-cannabis food or beverages or cannabis themed non-food items such as clothing, apparel, etc. We could, instead of saying non-cannabis food or beverages, we could say food or beverages that do not contain cannabis. Does that make it clear?
Well, that would be different. If it doesn't contain cannabis, but it's cannabis themed, you can have a picture of cannabis on a t-shirt, but it's not cannabis containing. We've already said non,
Including both those things that don't have cannabis and the things that are themed with cannabis.
that would seem to cover it. We're saying our exclusion of food, but are not limited to. So we gave some examples. We're basically just saying anything that's non-cannabis containing or cannabis themed.
Sounds good to me to put in those three places. The
Okay.
cannabis establishment, dispensary, facility, and then retail.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're consistent in the word. People okay with putting that in? Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. What you flag, what you need to flag.
And maybe under the hybrid retailer.
That's included. Cannabis.
Cannabis establishment
Includes all.
includes all the kinds of cannabis businesses.
Right.
Under cannabis
So they don't have to
establishment,
put it under
that's what
the-
these rules are called, and that includes all.
When we put it there, it's covering everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I guess the third one was about limiting the cannabis establishments to hunting on state roads. How would this be limited? And Rich says it could be considered as one of the special permit criteria considered, but it may create unintended consequences. If it's an absolute requirement, state roads have sightline and other issues that may be problematic, in some other town roads nearby.
So I would think part of our regulations would require that they demonstrate adequate sightlines.
It's already a requirement for every special permit.
Correct.
Yep.
So, again, if it reduces the amount of opportunities to have a location, that's fine. I don't really see how that applies to concern about limiting it to state roads. If the site has an issue with sightline, things that's separate from whether it's a state or not.
And again, the point would be when we do a special permit criteria, we're gonna have to be addressing traffic and sightlines, all the stuff we address anyway. And they're gonna have to demonstrate to us what the sightlines are. Whether it's a cannabis establishment or not. It would be okay then, not having to create more wording in the draft on this then. Because again, this goes by a special permit process. So what we don't put in under cannabis doesn't limit us. Because we still have through that special permit process, the opportunity to review and ask questions, and if we feel it's germane to the application. Request further staff input, request other input as may be needed. So the special permit process gives us that flexibility. You don't necessarily have to write every single thing in the cannabis. Because a lot of it's built into special permit process for our review.
You wanted to limit it to state roads.
But does anybody feel we need to limit it to state roads versus go through the special permit process? We're gonna be having to deal with traffic and sightlines anyway.
I believe we should limit it to state. I am really trying to reduce potential of having cannabis facilities out on Taylor corners and everything that's on Westwood side. I think it should be reduced it to state roads, and I think it eliminates 70 or 80% of the potential problems we have.
Because we're only talking about a number of state roads, that's
There's
it.
lots of frontage in state roads, no
Yeah.
question. But it takes out a lot of the issues that neighbors have in terms of noise and parking and things like that.
And I would try to solicit state roads in case we just wanted to list instead of saying state roads.
I would list the four.
It's just four.
Here. Yeah.
Okay. So seems easy enough to list saying these are the allowable locations.
State roads.
I
What do
also-
people think? Limiting it to state roads?
I'm not so sure. That's whether we. There's other, just trying to picture which ones, but other town roads that are. Are plenty of access, and then there's plenty of land on a lot of these, on the state roads. You may be limited to. How much frontage there is available for anybody putting these in. On the state roads, most everything. A lot of things are already taken up, occupied. Whereas along town roads. We don't want it on a very small road, and so, like we said, the special permit, we have to demonstrate the. Sight line. Available parking. This type of things.
But it could be allowed if they meet sightlines and everything else on a small town road. Then it meets the regulations, it would meet the regulation, where it's on a state road. You would be limiting it to just those, and no town roads.
You don't
Private
want
roads
dead end
would be
roads,
excluded as
you're
well.
not on the dead end road or in cul-de-sac. But we have a lot of town roads that are, plenty of traffic. You can't put it on Cemetery Road, that one wouldn't work.
Doug, did you have something?
You rule out front with my biases. I'm trying to restrict where they can go. If it becomes a problem. The applicants are welcome to come back and present tell us that they'd like to have us somewhere else. If we see it's an issue, then fine, we can change our regulations. But I tend to be the other approach right now. Let's limit it. We fulfill our obligations so that we can get out of the moratorium. We come up with some regulations. They may be very restrictive right now. We find that it's a problem, we always can loosen them up. I'm just worried more that we have loopholes that all of a sudden we have cannabis distributor on a road that we never expected them to be. They're saying we expect it to be on the state highways. Maybe there isn't a lot of opportunities for them to be there. They can always come back and ask for a change in our regulations.
Joe?
And I was just gonna offer that the state roads probably have more visibility. Than the town roads that might be considered for a dispensary or a retailer, so. I think having it limited to state roads gives us better initial step into this.
What do others think about limiting it to the state roads? Again, there's only a few, that would be it. They're long, but that would just be it. Everything else, town road, private road, no. only be on, you have to have frontage on the state road. Dean?
If we find that like a town road isn't safe, don't we have the ability to deny that application due to public safety?
If we feel that someone wants to put it on a town road and they don't meet sight lines, if they can't meet it. Or we feel traffic is a safety issue, whatever we do
Yeah.
have some purview, the issue
You brought
though
up
is,
Taylor Road, dirt. Somebody wants to put it on that, I'm pretty sure. Not made to handle that kind of traffic. We can deny that, can't we?
we'd have to ground it in what we feel would be a public safety concern, and we would probably want to be asking Rich to see what he would think about that, because we would have to be careful about someone that appeals. We would have to be very clear on the record what our reasoning is, and that we are authorized by statute to address public safety, and it's one of the criteria in a special permit. And if we feel it's not met, we have to be very clear on the record about that. But on the other hand, there could be a lot of town roads that might be questionable, but they might meet the regulations, and then what recourse, what might we have? That's just one argument. The other argument is, if it's, is it too limiting? But on the other hand, putting it just on state roads, as you said, Doug, that's the only place it would be. All the other roads in town would not apply.
One of the extras required by saying to state roads, you also have the state's gonna require us to their site
They are.
lines, and they're gonna be super restrictive as to what they're gonna allow in and out, drive, visit, parking lots and all that kind of stuff, how they're gonna be handled. So that kind of actually our hands. Not too much, so we puts us in a position of being sued because, we weren't being fair or something like that, whereas if we just restrict state roads, it's all done.
Because you're right, we would have to get DOT.
I-
David, then Delia.
I think that, like Doug said, if we're restricted to state road, we can always loosen it up if it's gonna be hard to go the other way. And so we let it in. And there's lots of small businesses on small back roads, and they're gonna say, this business is allowed, we're not, similar traffic flows, we're gonna. They were just setting yourself up to,
We're gonna have a little more clout with the state police being supported. by establishment on the state road too, that's a real thing. Let's face it, they react probably the state property, but the town property.
Delia, then Sid.
The state roads typically have a much wider right of way. They are designed to handle higher traffic volumes and higher speeds. So they may be more suited to handle higher volume business. We face this issue every time we have a special permit application come in, or we face some other kind of an application on one of the back roads. So I think I've been your planner for 16 years, I think there's enough concern every time we have a proposal on those smaller roads. I would think these businesses have the potential to be high volume. I would think you'd want to think of considering all those other development proposals we've seen, that you might want to keep your high volume potential businesses to the state roads where they're already designed to handle that volume and higher speeds. And so I don't know, the DOT gets involved in the parking lot, but they get involved in how it comes out to the road and
Yeah.
any sort of drainage issues that come out the road, that kind of thing.
We can only have so much big of a front there, then you could have an island, you can't have 4 cars coming on. I remember what they did the big purchase down here with the islands and everything he had to have.
And if we do limit the state roads and the DOT comes to us and says, hey, here's this application. Now, we're not gonna approve. And that's important information for us to hear, plus the applicant, I would hope the applicant, as part of due diligence, would talk with DOT. I know DOT would or would not allow it. You're right, I'm sure they would be very much on their road, what would be going on. Delia?
There are 4 state roads and they're long. I don't have the amount of frontage, but that's quite a lot of area as a opportunity. You're not limiting it so much that no one has an opportunity to put one of your businesses in, but you were keeping it out of the narrow roads, the except for 169, local scenic roads, if you keep them on a state road.
Sid, you had something then?
Yeah, questions. So about a month ago, Delia put together this 3 or 4 page memo about sensitive sites, historic sites, 1,500 foot buffer. So are we still thinking about we limit these establishments to state roads? Are we also gonna not allow them within these sensitive sites, schools, playground, churches, stuff like that?
Wouldn't we still want it with regards to the sensitive sites?
Can't support that.
I would, because you could be on a state road and right next to, say, church,
Academy or
right, yeah, so, or the public schools.
Public schools.
But the other question I had was, and it kind of got triggered by what Mark was, I think, alluding to, is what if there's an established business, and we could use Rogers Corporation, use Woodstock as an example. Let's say they wanted to diversify, open up a cannabis retail site. You know, the sightlines are clear, the road is wide, there's a lot of traffic, people are well aware there's a business there, the truck traffic pulling in and out. With that in mind, do we want to allow an established business to, again, call it diversify or add cannabis sales to their existing business? Could be Tim's Creamery, Tractors Trimmers out on 171, Rogers. No, it's town.
Then you have to allow that all throughout the same zone, which would be the community district.
Yeah.
It's like the vast majority of the towns. So if you're gonna do that, you would have to allow any business to have the opportunity to apply, and then you would have to go through a process. So what that would do is that would be anywhere.
Where there's a business already.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of tossing it out there for discussion.
I would
I'm
think
not supporting it, just thinking about it.
that that would open up throughout the entirety of it. Well, we have the community. I don't know if there's any businesses in the Lake District.
Not allowed.
Right.
Home occupation.
So, yeah, we would open it up to it all. So. We should get away from the state road.
Thing down.
Oh, is that?
It is an amendable thing down the road.
Yeah, yep.
If we felt that. I'm a very big supporter of diversification. Otherwise, I just. So. Have to be sensitive to that, because times change. You know, businesses change, once they go and they get it, given up.
We would have to see then what happens over time if we don't allow it, and then we start in a couple of years having businesses that are existing want to start diversifying. We would have to have that discussion again. David, and then I think, Joe, you wanted to go?
I was just gonna say, we already have a brewery on a pretty small back road, so it'd be hard to limit. You know, they can say, look, you got a brewery here that has high traffic, high volume. You know, why can't we be on a similar back road? So I think we should limit the state.
Joe?
I was just gonna say, all of this is amendable. We don't have any application. We want to get something on the record to get going. Somebody with burning interest to it on maybe Taylor or let them come forward and talk about it next time. But just to keep moving ahead and get something back. Supporting state road.
Anything from anybody else? Sid?
Yeah, just kind of a follow-up. So let's, as an example, use Tractors to Trimmers. It's on a state road, so it meets that criteria. Let's say they meet the sight lines, they're not near one of these sensitive sites. They want to start selling cannabis too, in addition to what they do now. That's something that we want to allow, or?
I think that would be a separate building. They'd have to have a separate structure if I was reading some of this.
Oh, all right.
The state's gonna require that. Right, the state has very, very strict rules as far as what is licensed. And they really are looking for, you're not just putting this in the back of a grocery store, it's like. You really have to be very strict criteria for the state, it's really, these are standalone. Buildings that are meeting all of that criteria in order to get the license from the state.
Sounds like they could put it on their property. Practice.
If they're able to, yeah.
Wanted to do it separate.
call it the joint on 171.
You're thinking ahead. Joe? Lou?
Yeah, they'd probably have to just ditch the repair business and just have cannabis.
Why would they?
They don't have that much property.
No, but yeah, if it is, I'm just thinking, would we allow that?
But I live on 171. I live on a state. So I'm ambivalent, but, I think anybody who comes in with an application is gonna wanna be on a state road. Just from a commercial standpoint and to have, enough people to buy their product. So I can live with it. I don't want tractors to trimmers to have it. I don't want the gas station there. I'm between the two of them. But
I don't think the
property
state's
do you
gonna
have?
allow the gas station to do it. They have to have a. whole-
Say again,
How much property do you have?
14.
Along with the good lot.
I guess I could do it.
You have something to do?
If it doesn't stop the business such as tractor trimmers could do it, instead of imagining, we would go back to what it actually says. When it says no cannabis establishment shall be allowed within the same building, structure or portion thereof that is used for residential purposes. A mixed use properties, that cannabis establishment shall be in a separate building from any residential use in the property. So it wouldn't be in their house, and it would be, but it doesn't say it can't be in the building where the tractor business is. And I don't see why they would have to close that business. Doesn't say that you can only have one business, it just says it can't be in the house.
Except our definition of incentive, which has changed. So that they have to be separate within the building. You'd have to have tractors supplied, and then a separate entrance, go to the cannabis.
They can't be doing
They can't
non-cannabis stuff.
sell non-cannabis stuff.
My understanding is the state wants standalone places because of all the rules they've set. You really just wouldn't be able to meet the state.
It doesn't-
So,
I don't think standalone is the right word, it has to be separate. Because it could be the same building, but we just have to have a separate entrance and a partition wall between.
for
You
example.
couldn't go from the tractor side to buy a blade for your lawnmower and then buy some weed on the other counter.
Right, so that's what I thought you meant, I thought you meant that it had to be a separate building. It just to be a separate business, that would be a separate unit, like a condo unit or whatever.
And for example, I'm in Thompson, so the village, I have 7 different units.
Right,
So I could have one selling cannabis, I could have one selling liquor, and then have tractor and lawnmower business, but they all have to have something.
And again, you have to meet the state licensing criteria, which is very strict. Well, what are your confines of doing it and everything else? In order to get your license from the state and maintain it. So we,
but you wanna add that standard about state roads, please let me know and I'll add it.
so I haven't heard anybody right now objecting. So do we, sounds like we'll put the state road in.
Yes.
Okay,
You think tractors and trimmers could sell weed whackers and tractors?
Which side did they sell on?
you have a lot of happy customers coming and picking up their tractors. So,
I think it's too much like Saturday.
I have some personal problems with cannabis. I think it's great that it's not illegal. I have to deal with alcohol and drugs in the workforce all the time. And cannabis I've dealt with for years, and it was always illegal. But it is a problem, and it does impede people. I don't think they should go to jail for smoking a joint, but I also don't want them to come to work after they smoke a joint too. Especially when they're using power.
I can tell you one of the things from a regulatory point of view from the state that's vexing is number one, you're bumping into federal law, which has not changed. It's still illegal. That's what gets into some of the banking things these companies face with. Banks are like, well, the banks have very clear rules, and it creates a problem. The other though is, I can tell you from having served this past year on public safety committee, we've had a number of discussions that a lot of police forces, including the state police, have said there's no real defined standards. Unlike alcohol, where there's been standards that have been researched and studied for decades, you can argue about, do you want to drop the alcohol, blood alcohol level, things like cannabis. It's not clearly defined. And then what are the standardized tests? You know, that are recognized to be able to test for it, and then what's the standardized levels that you're considered impaired, not impaired? A lot of that is just unknown. And so it's very difficult from a regulatory point of view. You're talking about, you're driving under the influence, or a lawyer, defense lawyer is going to ask, well, what's your definition? Driving under the influence of cannabis. We may all know, yeah, this person's impaired, but legally, that could become a technicality. So it is very difficult.
My other question is, so the way I've drafted it right now, it says the cannabis establishment shall be located on properties. Or should say we're on a property with frontage on a state road such as Route 169, 171, 197, or 198. Do you want to have a minimum of frontage? So someone could have a property that has 5 feet of frontage and then the rest of the property then some other.
We already have that in the zone regs about, that chart that talks about, I think, non-residential, non-agriculture.
It doesn't say you have to have.
And is this frontage or is it driveway? Because roughly relative.
No, it's frontage. I thought we already have that in here.
But that's saying you have to have frontage on a road. It doesn't say you have to have that minimum frontage on a state road.
No, but if it's talking about a road, that includes state.
Right, but you're saying here, all that minimum frontage has to be on a state road.
Right, so
So
we
right
have,
now, we don't have a number.
well, we do, we have here in the regulations, non-residential / commercial on a public street has to be 150 feet minimum frontage.
Right.
That
So
includes state road.
my point is, this standard that says you have to have frontage on a state road, because you haven't set what the minimum frontage is. They could have
We already have it in the regs though.
No,
If it
she's saying you have the
that's-
frontage of the-
state road. That
No,
would be-
It says public street, which is state road is public.
No, but what I'm saying is, that's allowing a special permit on any public street that has a minimum of that frontage. You're saying you want these to be only located on properties that have them a frontage, but you haven't said how much.
Well, again, I
On
think
state road.
the regs do talk about, and we have done special permits on state roads. If you want to just go with the 150 feet, we already have listed for non-residential / commercial.
But I'm thinking,
150 feet has to be on the state road.
that's what
Yeah,
I'm
it has to be
saying.
on the
That's right.
public street,
So,
So,
On a state road.
which is a public street.
yes, they could say they have 150 feet on.
That's fine. If you want to put 150, I have no problem with it. Our table still covers it,
It does-
so we don't have to change the table.
It does it. Because you could, and I could see someone do it. They have frontage on the state road, but they'll have the access on Smithford.
Yeah.
And they got frontage on 171, but they're gonna have the access on Smithford.
But we're not allowing,
we could specify the front of the access also has to be.
That's what you need to do.
so do that.
I would-
But if you want to have a frontage dimension, go with the one we already used, the 150.
We're gonna get it all on 171.
Well, we would have to say that the only access, the ones that they want 2 access points. Only. Frontage on-
And the thousand, and this is probably minimum frontage of the state road.
We have to need to put in the only access. on it. So we want to make it clear that it's on a state road. We'll do the 150-foot frontage minimum that we already have in the regs. And we also want to make it clear that if you are boundary 2 roads, one's a state road, one's a town road, your only access has to be the state road. You can't have your access or any access on the non-state road. Is that correct?
Access only from state road.
How about this, the cannabis establishment shall be located with the only access on a property with minimum frontage of 150 feet on a state road, such as Route 169, 171, 197, or 198.
Does that work for people? Okay, all right. I think that takes care of what we wanted to do in this draft about state roads. I think personally that makes it easier to deal with.
Which means we don't need to talk about a zone.
I was gonna say, if we talk about question 4 and question 8, we wouldn't then need to create a new zone. Because in a sense, we're saying only the state roads, plus Rich in one of his answers talked about creating a new zone might be, what you said, extraordinary complicated step, but it sounds like we simplified it now by saying state roads. Would that cover us? Okay, and then the fifth question is, cannabis growing facilities be allowed in town with a requirement to front on a state road? We just did that.
Yeah.
We already answered that one about the state road.
Yeah.
And again, just so it's clear on the record, we're talking about all of these cannabis things have to be on the state road. Yes. We have it worded that way, so we're covered for all these different things. State road, okay. And then can we limit the size of cultivators? He says, Bruce says, I don't see why not, as long as there's some rational basis for the decision. Similar to towns putting a cap on the size of retail establishments. We actually do already have a cap on square footage for non-residential, non-agricultural. We have that in our reg somewhere. I don't know if that would then be, if we want to create something different for cannabis, but it's in our regs. I forget which section. Was put in some years ago, limiting size.
I'm wondering, to make it clear, under the part of our new text amendment,
Up here.
where it talks about how you need a special permit, maybe we should make it clear that this is in addition to the other special permit section, just so no one thinks this is the only thing we have to follow.
Well, we should say yes, that all the special permit criteria and all the zoning regulations apply, unless otherwise specified in this section.
So how do you want to, is this where it's going, the intent, and then how would you phrase it?
I think you can just say with something as simple as saying that all special permit criteria and all zoning regulations apply unless otherwise specified in this section. Would that work to make it clear?
Well, doesn't the special permit have, we have the ability within that to say, well, we want to put up a 10,000 square foot facility, but we won't got enough parking. No, that math doesn't work, you know, if you're going to do so much business and expect so many customers, then we've got to, we do have kind of
We actually don't have standards on parking. We tell people to show us that you are proposing what you need, and so we don't have the. Like lots of other towns will say, depending on the use, you need X number of spaces, or maybe it's depending on the class of building. We don't have that. But what I'm drafting here is under the intent, the last sentence after the part on the intent, which is a little small to read there, I can zoom in.
Well, what Tim is talking about is we do have a reasonable flexibility through the special permit process. Again, it has to be grounded in our regulations, which are grounded in state statute authorizing us. If we step beyond what our statutory authority is or what our regulations allow, that's different. We do have discussion. Just while Dee was doing that, one thing we do have under non-residential uses, we say here about maximum size of permitted non-residential buildings, say, other than the industrial district. We say, single occupant non-residential building can't exceed 15,000 square feet of gross floor area. We say multi-occupant non-residential building shall not exceed 30,000, with no single tenant or user having more than 15,000. And we also say, at the same time, the total combined square footage of all non-residential buildings on a parcel shall not exceed 30,000 square feet. So we already have these non-residential, non-agriculture limitations in. I forget when we put those in. That was some time ago. But those would apply to cannabis commercial
I would
establishments.
think you'd wanna,
So right there, though. that's
Had
only
it.
microculture.
under here in the minimum standards, you'd say in addition to standards for non-residential use.
Well, that gets into the regulations,
Right
all
here,
aspects of
This
regulation.
sounds like, this is all that applies to cannabis. I would think minimum standards in addition to those.
However you want to word it. But all aspects of these zoning regulations would apply unless we specify something different. Are we looking to do anything different? Or the maximum size beyond what we already have?
15,000.
Can't be 15,000, be 15,000.
What? What does it say that?
For what?
For cultivator,
Cultivate.
Where does it say that?
in the definition, and then that. I'm using not less than 15,000 square feet.
Well, our regulations say that you can't exceed 15,000 square feet for single occupant.
That's my point, we have a definition, we have standard that seem to apply to this.
So what do we wish to,
They can't come in as any.
no, cannabis is not regulated by the state as ag. It's completely regulated. It's purposely, that would be not go back. They can't come in to do ag.
Standard to apply, then we are defining something that. can't
So what do we wish to do as far as,
It says-
if we're saying that it has to be not less than 15,000 square feet for a cultivator, our regulations otherwise say, no. We don't allow more than 15,000 for non-residential, non-ag. We would have to find something different.
It's not less than, and it can't be more than, it's a walk, 15,000 square feet is it. Facility, 15,000 square feet.
So
But is that, it says, but isn't that ag?
No, it's not ag.
It's not residential.
The state is very clear. This is
Okay.
regulated under DCP, not under the Department of Ag. So what do we?
I think we need to
In
correct
addition to all
that.
the rest of our regulations, they have.
It sounds like you're allowed, something that's not allowed,
That's correct. However,
then you're gonna.
if we don't set a max,
Yeah, I
it
know.
bumps into,
Yeah, I know, that's, but this is a subset of the rest of our regulations that they have.
oh, that's why we have to decide what would be a maximum. So if we're saying right now, our regulations currently say anything non-residential, non-ag. Single occupant non-residential building can't be more than 15,000 square feet. The total combined of all the buildings on a parcel can't exceed 30. But if we say here cultivator can't be less than 15,000, you want to set a maximum?
Well, then they're a micro cultivator, a different definition,
Yeah, the micro would
is
fine.
2,000, 10,000 square feet.
So then
So we just limited it to micro cultivator.
we don't allow cultivator unless you come in at 15,000. Exactly. That's where I'm just
So
asking.
once again, you could amend it, so we saw this huge opportunity coming down the road that you would have that opportunity to go back and amend our regulations to allow. it. But in the meantime, all you're doing is allowing a micro cultivator. You're not allowing a.
I think we have to decide.
Yeah.
Correct.
If we don't want a cultivators, okay. If we just want to limit it to micro cultivators, that's fine. But I don't want someone sitting here and saying, I have exactly 15,000 feet. You gotta let me go.
And you know, someone might.
Yeah.
Potentially try to do that.
Well, you're gonna get it. Mentioned it's 15,000 feet of growth space. So does that include hallways? Does that include bathrooms? So if our regulations say they can't be more than 15,000 feet. This says 15,000 feet, you're basically not allowed, except you're gonna end up in court. Defending you.
Unless you have someone who comes in and says, I'm gonna do 15,000 square feet, and I'm gonna have another 10,000 square foot separate building on the parcel. As long as the total is less than 30, or not
It
more than
says
30.
gross space.
Right,
But
it does. It does.
if we want to allow cultivators, then we should probably bring it and say it's 14,000 feet.
Well, the cultivator definition is.
But that's a existing rule that we have to.
So let's just limit it to
Yeah,
micro.
why don't we just limit it to micro?
As long as everybody agrees it's limited to micro cultivators, that's fine.
And make that verbiage.
So we're gonna say,
Then down to
You're the,
we're not gonna allow,
Not gonna allow cultivators, just micro.
And we're allowed to do that, correct? We
yeah,
can
that was
exclude,
one of the questions to the attorney,
Yes,
we
we can,
said that you could. He said.
so
that you
let's
could
start with
prohibit
micro cultivators. If it becomes an issue, we can change it.
yes, we do have the authority to limit the size of this, because otherwise the statute basically says, yes, it falls under zoning. And you can, so we would have to say right now, the micro cultivator is what? Is,
2 to 10.
yeah, 2 to 10. And we're not allowing anything more than 10,000. We would get rid of the cultivator definition.
Yeah.
And then that's just it. micro
Would you have the
cultivators.
definition, but just specify it's prohibited, just so you know what it is.
Yeah, I leave the definition
Because it says here, not less than
Only allowed.
15,000.
You know, the differences, you know.
That's fine, we can just say this is not allowed. Okay,
Leave the cultivator definition there and say, we're not allowing this, we're only allowing.
Okay. all right, that's fine, that works. I think that gets into,
So where do we put the berms?
well, you're gonna put it into the definition.
What's, when you say uses wildlife special permit include cannabis establishment, you could say
But not
with, something like with the exception of the cultivator.
correct, that's fine.
Is that how you want to word it?
We're gonna have to- Okay. That gets through all the questions that the commission had asked Rich, and the answer we got back.
Good answer.
So Rich will fix it if I worded it wrongly, but under where, because normally you have a list of your permitted uses and your special permitted uses. So what we're proposing to add under your special permitted uses in the community district, cannabis establishment, so I've added with the exception of cultivators, which are prohibited.
Okay.
And we might have to add, we have prohibited uses, I think, somewhere
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
So I might have to add more
Yeah.
text to the, so that in that section, we put cannabis cultivators.
So
I have to put a note to myself.
we do, because when we talk about permits, this will be in the community district, not the Lake District, but industrial district. So yes, don't we have something that says these are what would go for a special permit, we have to put that in. And then we also have to say what's not allowed, you're right, which is cultivated.
But that text now, though, I can add it tomorrow.
We talked before that we would need to do that.
Article 3,
So here, you can put this under. But you have to draft a new thing that adds the carbon prohibited use.
It's where Joe is mentioning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Article 3 has prohibited uses.
And we'd also have to say under uses allowed by special permit, we'd have to say cannabis establishments, not including cultivators, however we want to word it. to make it clear. But you'll,
So where did you want to put that?
if we're, don't we have to put in there under special, uses allowed by special permit, don't we have? to
It's
put in-
already drafted right here.
Okay, so we have, but, there
I
it
was
says-
adding with the exception of cultivators.
okay, so then we're covered.
But then under the section specifically mentioned prohibition,
We should put it cultivate.
we would add in cannabis cultivators.
Okay,
So I have a note right now, that I'll draft tomorrow.
that's good. I'll be mindful of, oh, not too bad. Where are we otherwise from a standpoint of where we are with the draft and how we want to move forward?
I like it, I moved it. Second. Public hearing.
Well, we would, but we just have the motion on the table right now, so we get a second vote. Go accordingly, so we have a motion, your motion is what, Jeff?
We moved the draft to the public hearing.
Is there a second? Let me write this down, so we can. Move candidate draft to. public hearing. That was, Jeff Markov made the motion, Tim Young seconded, and now we get into discussion of the motion. Anything we're gonna be taking to a public hearing on our text amendments, unless it's like one sentence, we've had Rich review. So we would be getting input from him anyway, whatever we take. So we would get that input from him. And he would let us know, yeah, it's fine, or no, you should change something. And we would get that input for the public hearing. That would be the process.
We haven't seen this draft yet. Do we get a chance to look at it before it goes to public hearing?
Yeah. Well, what would happen is we would have a draft put together. We would send, from a process point of view, we would send a copy to Rich. Copies would go out certainly to commissioners. But this is the current draft at whatever date. Then that would be what we take to public hearing. We can, during public hearing, we get the input, we hear from Rich. We can all provide our own input. And then after public hearing, we would deliberate, we can make some changes.
Or we can make changes after,
Yes, we can.
we'd have to go back to public hearing again.
Well, if we held the public hearing and we've gotten input, that has to be brought out during public hearing. Then we act upon it, similar to how we do modifications to special permits. We're hearing stuff and we bring them up during public hearing. Then we have the application, and when we deliberate, then we can say, well, we're going to approve it, but now we have to have these modifications. because this is what we heard, and this is what the concerns were raised during our public hearing. So we do have the opportunity.
It's just something like it's gonna take a lot of time. Now we're running into. Look, if I draft it, and then you wanna look at it before you schedule the public hearing. That's gonna bring us into August, and then you have to schedule the public hearing in a month. I mean. they-
Well, right
they don't-
now, I would even amend my, to say that we have the public hearing. Business meeting for September. It's gonna be around the first week and, you know, we really want. Office.
So what the process would be is, because we're talking about this motion, we say, we're gonna, if we approve this motion, you say, you okay with him seconding the change to September 21st? So if we say that's what we're setting for public hearing, we're gonna be doing the notices, whatever, we're gonna be sending it to Rich anyway. We're gonna be having that copy come out to commissioners. We wouldn't be bringing it up at another meeting till the public hearing,
Now, September 21st, when is our deadline for?
October 31st.
That'll give us enough time.
It would potentially, and we'd have to be mindful of that.
When would we expect the draft?
Celia?
Kind of a clean draft.
The issues will be wanted more time before the moratorium ends. That'll be bringing it up at the August 20th meeting.
I could have it for you the first week of August.
That'll be enough time
And
for the
If
public.
you
hearing.
want, at that time, I could send it to the town attorney. And maybe he'll have his comments back for you to look at it at your August meeting.
Well, once we
But
set,
if I,
the public hearing, that will be the August 20th. So yes, and Rich likely would be able,
it's just, I need to have time between when you set the date of the hearing to do my notice to meet out. And I know I work there, but I have to meet the law,
I know.
and I have to prove that I sent it to them by the right date by sending it by email.
Do we want to do the August 20th? And then if we needed to continue the public hearing, we still have enough time before getting into the end of the moratorium, or do we want to set the September 21st? Right now, the motion is September 21st.
August 20th is fine for me. I just want to make sure we don't have time to advertise.
Actually, August 20th is Monday,
No, it's, oh, I'm sorry, it's the 17th.
so that's not enough time between July 20th and August
Do we
17th.
want to do well, the first week of September is
Actually, it's the after there,
right,
7th, I believe.
but there's still stuff happening there, it's closing down. So what,
It
which
it
date
sounds
do we
like we're
want?
really trying to cancel it in, that we just need to extend the moratorium and then, you know, we do this. in
More
November.
time is the text amendment of the hometown.
Okay, but that might accept it.
So.
Yeah.
So I would say right now we have the motion on the table for setting the public hearing. That's our discussion. So right now it's listed. The motion is for right now, September 21st. Would give, if we did that, that would give enough time for Rich to review it. Rich would have to provide us input for the public hearing. We would be reviewing it, and if we as commissioners have questions, comments, whatever, that would have to be brought up at the public hearing. Then we would go accordingly. Doug?
Is anybody hearing anybody, from anyone in the community with questions about cannabis?
No.
So I think if we can go for that September meeting.
Yeah.
And just get it in place, it may not be perfect, get it in place, and then we can make adjustments.
Right. I mean, at this point, it's clerical tweaking, because we approved it ourselves, we're happy with it, we discussed it, we're ready to go. Now, we're gonna listen to the input, we can digest it, or we can not. And
Well, that's still just throwing it back up.
Want to make changes, wait until the public hearing starts, and then you would discuss it during the process.
Correct. So we have to bring everything up during public hearing,
it's
which
not
we
like
wouldn't be
this
going
doesn't
through
have
it
to be
anyway.
Voted on by the town.
So at this point, doesn't go to, zoning doesn't go to.
To
town
me,
meeting.
it's just a formality.
So right now, the motion is to move the draft to a public hearing, which would be September 21st. You and Tim okay with the usual 7:45 time? And we've already discussed that Rich is going to be getting a copy and asking him to provide us input for the public hearing. We will be getting copies out as well, everybody. Now we'll give enough time for everybody to review things before the public hearing. Do we have any further discussion on it, the motion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? That so passes. You'll take care of getting it to Rich, getting it to us,
Yep.
and doing whatever notices you have to notice. Okay. So that's taken, that would be taken care of. All right, so mark that on your calendars, everybody. We would go accordingly. The next item we have. Oh, here it is. I don't see. From the CEO, is able to be with us tonight, it seems. We have, from an office point of view, there hasn't been anything new since the last talk. We did get a list of permits and enforcement stuff from the CEO. We do have a home occupation application that came in. That we wanted to discuss. This is on the, Square Level Carpentry LLC 1106198. I don't know if people have any comments or questions, Joe?
My only comment is, it's not the new form that the commission approved.
It is, which one did we get here?
Okay, previous form.
It is, because I don't have the, oh, here it is. Residential zoning, yes, this is not actually the current form that's supposed to be used.
So I don't know if they're just hard copies in the office that might be used, because I looked online and the new form is off.
Yes, I knew it went on because Dan had put it on.
Right.
So we'll need to clarify this because we're gonna have to I'll let John know that this is actually not the correct form.
Right.
We're to go, they just have to have them fill out a new form.
I don't think it'll change too much what they're doing, but it should be.
Yes, because didn't we make a few other changes?
Yeah.
I'll let him know. I'll send him an email to say, have them submit it on the correct form and ask Tracy that if there are any hard copies, get rid of them. I know online it could change.
Yep.
But we asked for it, so I'll mention that. Otherwise, as far as discussion for a home occupation, John,
Not for the whole.
this would seem to be kind of in line with how we've been thinking of home occupation. Okay, seems to me. I'll follow up. Thank you, Joe, for pointing that out.
Do have a question. You're ready.
Sure, about CEO.
On the CEO, just curious on the enforcement, there's a stone wall height location. Specification. Any idea what that is? Maybe just crossing the boundary line. Very close to the road. Close to the road. Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anything from anybody else? Budget review and bills, I'll just state that there were two bills that came in that did verify and we signed off on them. Otherwise, unless we have anything else relative to our budget, we're still within our budget. So, this point in this year, but we're pretty good anyway. Any citizens' comments? Okay. We did not receive any correspondence as far as I know. We didn't receive it. It's nothing that Tracy told me we had. That takes us to,
Just got a quick comment, just to say, I got my packet in a timely manner in the USPS.
and do you know who you should thank for that?
Basically,
No, you should thank your state senator. Whoever that is, you should just, I'm sure some strings were pulled with you, but yeah.
That's the alliance that are coming up. Yeah, then it'll both.
I came yesterday to pick my packet up and I could, check out the taxes, so. Baseball, since put a stamp on it. So I get in the vestibule. There's a guy there and I swear to God, he had that many tax bills. He's paying them one at a time, so I go around in the town hall, try to open the one spot. I didn't really rude, but I just. Said the ignorance. Here's the phone, carry it in. But the guy looked at me like. Sorry, buddy, I just want. They have a drop box there. That's all I needed to do.
Yeah.
Just a metal one on front.
yeah,
There it is. Okay. That takes us to the last agenda item, Mr. Young.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
So motion by Tim Young, seconded by David Moore to adjourning. Anybody wish to oppose or abstain? Whatever time you have.
They're not showing the existing condition. So they're showing